Recently, my partner and I went all in on buying a box truck to convert into a portable, off-grid tiny home. And as you can see, we drove it straight off the lot and decided to get straight to work. In one of my previous videos, you can see a basic overview of the internal specifications and dimensions of the truck. In this video, I'm going to be showing you my process of making the bed and basic wooden framing for the inside of it. This is a 3D model overviewing the bed, the refrigerator, and then the basic kitchen area that we've planned out for the inside of this truck. But to begin, we're going to be starting with the bed, and thankfully, here's what I realized on the drive home.
Ridiculous! I cannot believe this at all. This is huge. Also, the inside is 6'6", meaning that the bed frame fits.
Oh, it does?
It'll fit sideways, the correct way. So guess what we're gonna go do when we go home?
The couch underneath.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. At this point, it might as well just be a better idea.
So starting literally that same day, my fiance and I got to work. We already had a bed frame that was a full over full, and what we needed to do was take it and upcycle it by changing it into a queen over whatever, really. The plan was to put a little folding futon on the lower level to conceal and hold all the...
In the United States there are 15 million vacant homes, and yet only 700,000 people left homeless to live on our streets. They die while we allow homes to go empty.
Every day. And this build just involved a lot of grinding, sanding, and welding back to back to reinforce and lift up this structure. A lot of what I do whenever I'm designing or building anything comes down to trying to focus on how I can upcycle or reuse materials that I already have access to. So we really already had this bed frame, and it's really thin gauge steel, but it was workable, and I was able to weld these feet on pretty easily. Okay, hello, hi. We are pretty much done welding the bed at this point, the bed frame. It has a couple more things we need to do. We need to take it apart, and then we need to put it in the truck and do a test fit. And then we will take it back out, because then we need to start working on framing, because we finished our priority, which was getting this bed done. These welds, some of them are perfectly fine. It looks like I was stacking dimes. Some of these are the most disgusting, porous, failure to fuse base metals things I've ever done in my entire life, and I feel horrible. However, I was never once an aesthetic welder. I'm just some flux core jockey. So this is okay. A lot of these degrees are not 90, and it doesn't matter. What matters is that we have a queen size bed, and I paid like $60 for this steel, for a queen size bunk bed, which barely exists, which would be hundreds and hundreds of dollars, not to mention made custom to our sizes with the exact things that we need, and ridiculously overbuilt and strong. So that is thanks to my fiance's work with me on this. She did all the grinding, I did a lot of the cutting and the welding, and now we have something great, which is cool. We'll do a test fit and see if it fits, and whether or not we screwed up our math. We'll see how that goes. And thankfully, it actually fit pretty well. You can see it here towards the engine side of the box. It is fitting pretty much perfectly. Okay. Before I can even start framing, I have to take our folding futon couch out and weld on its extensions, because once I'm too framed in, I won't be able to set up the electrical systems very well, and the electrical systems are being placed underneath this couch, so I need the right amount of clearance, and I need to know what dimensions I'm working with to build the box that's sort of going to house all of the electronics at the same time. So first up is grinding down these feet and welding extensions onto them. I have to weld 7-inch extensions 4 times, and then this will be good and extended. So as is becoming obvious throughout this build,
Productivity, in an economic context, is the collective value across goods and services a given organization or state produces. Since 1973, the productivity of an average American worker has increased 74%, and their compensation, only 9%.
Into something we can use for this box truck moving forward. What you have to do is remove the paint from the metal. You can't weld over something with paint on it. So you have to grind down pretty much anything and everything every time that you want to weld something to it. Then what I'm doing now is cutting all of the pieces of raw metal that I have to the right size. I think I need 7-inch extensions, and each of these are 1.5-inch square tube, and I think it's like 14 or even 12 gauge, so it's a lot thicker than the base metals that I'm working with. I get it from my local steel supplier. The vast majority of steel is recycled already. Super easy to work with material, super strong if you know how to weld. I do not love the fact that most of welding is just grinding and cutting, but once you actually get to the welding part, it does great work.
No matter how old I get or how long I've been building things, I consistently underestimate how long things will take. I think I started at like 11, and I think it's like 1, and all I've done is cut 4 legs and grind them so I can weld. 2 hours. Now I'm not even moving slow. I'm working. It just takes forever. I'm gonna weld it now.
So yeah, it's a lot of prep work just to actually get to the point that you can weld things. But once you're welding, assuming you basically know what you're doing, you can create some really strong structural materials, and you can create some really unique.
In 1950, adjusted for inflation, the average household made $43,000. The median home price would have been around $100,000 in today's money. Since then, wages have stagnated, and now, compared to the price of a home, homes cost 3 times more compared to an average household's income. In 2023, nearly a quarter of homes were not even owned by people. Corporations, conglomerates, and investment firms cannot sleep on a bed in the room of a house that they own. And yet, we live paycheck to feed the machine. This is late-stage capitalism.
Means essentially turning it into gas and having it just disappear like a laser.
Alright, that is the leg extensions welded on successfully. There is something to be said about welding to furniture. Oftentimes the steel they use is like a really thin gauge. I don't know what, maybe like 18 to 22 gauge. I don't know, it's really thin. And I like to weld 16 to 14 gauge normally. So for those of you that kind of get welding, especially the type that I'm doing, which is just crappy flux core welding, you tend to blow through the base metal that's thinnest. And I'm sick of blowing through the base metal. It's bothering me. But some of these welds aren't bad, actually. And it's nice to be done with the super thin stuff that was the bed frame, and this stuff is maybe 2 gauges thicker, which means I'm not blowing through it as much, and I can actually spend time making a good seam, which has been satisfying. So I'm going to let this cool. I'm going to clean off my welds. I'm not going to grind them down. There's just no point. I don't care to. There's no point in making everything look aesthetic. That's not the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to make something happen. I'm not an aesthetic welder, and I'm not getting paid right now. I'm doing this because I want to. So I'm going to at least clean off all the flux and then all the slag. And then I'm going to just spray them so that way they have some rust-proof paint on them. And then I'll leave it, and then I can do a test fit once it's dry. So that'll be cool.
So here I am having the time of my life trying to fit this ridiculous couch into here and realizing that I need to take the ladder off of the bed frame. So I did that. I screw around. I look like a Tom and Jerry skit, but I do eventually get it to fit. So thankfully this design will work.
The height is good. Appearance is fine. This is a side effect, but comes with the territory of having limited space. It sways a little too much side to side. I don't think it would ever break, but I don't like that and I don't trust it. So I think after I take it out, I'm going to build some wooden reinforcements. Not that I didn't already put a bunch of screws in to see if I could stop that exact same issue. But that's a physics problem.
All right, now that I am done with the basic pieces of furniture that sort of have to go into the box truck first, I can start working on framing. But before that, I would appreciate it if you like my videos, please get subscribed. If you like this video, be sure to like it. My next challenge as I move on to the wooden frame of this box truck is making it so all of the framing fits the internal dimensions correctly. So let's take a look at my weird solution for making that happen.
All right. This is the template I'm going to use to make sure all of my frames perfectly match the internal dimensions of the top of the truck. So I'm going to cut this into a bunch of lengths of at least 78 inches. I'm going to test each of them, sand each of them, and make just every one of them perfect. But now I have to do one correctly one time. And this will help me a lot to do that. But I did have to sacrifice a board to make that happen, which is a shame. Here goes my first attempt. I wanted to talk more about the financial aspects of making this situation work. I'm going to give you a quick full breakdown. I'm sure I will say it many times throughout these videos and throughout this series of videos. And again, my reason for that is because the financial transparency is incredibly important, because I don't want to sell a lifestyle. This is a sad thing that the state of our country is such that this is the default currently, at least for our situation and many others. So I don't want to sell some sort of, capitalist, entrepreneurial, meritocratic thing where it's like, yeah, I did this and like, yeah, I escaped the matrix. I hate that idea. This is not the matrix. This is your life. This is real. The box truck costed around $20,000. I've seen a lot of other builds where people get like a really cheap, really old box truck. I understand that you get a car, a truck, a box truck, a van that's $4,000, and that thing is going to have a breakdown that costs you thousands of dollars within the first 20,000 miles. It simply is going to, especially if you're actually driving it and using it to go distances and not just keeping it parked in one place forever. But our plan with this box truck, the reason we went with something that's a 2020, which is new as heck as of this year, it does have 120,000 miles on it, which is still a lot. The point for that was that we wanted a vehicle also, like an internal combustion engine car, and I wanted this to be the last one we ever buy. From here on out, it's velomobiles, electric motorcycles, any sorts of weird electric micromobility will be our preference moving forward. I want this to be the last traditional car that I ever buy, and so I need it to be able to drive. And I, as someone who works on cars, understand that the work that I'm gonna have to do, I'll always do it myself, which means it will suck when it goes wrong. So we started out with a high initial expense because we want to minimize our exposure to risk in terms of breakdowns and cost of repairs, and most importantly parts. We want to minimize our exposure to that risk. So we put most of the money into the vehicle, which had several benefits in terms of the fact that it already has traditional doors on the back. It has a door to the front. It has a vent. It has a solid roof with aluminum strut supports. It has a lot of features that make it much easier to build in and much less expensive to build inside of as well. So the truck is $20,000. I wanted to talk for a sec, where the hell did we get that money? Okay, so let me do my financial breakdown. I am a high school science teacher. I have been for the past 3 years. I make around $55,000 a year. I think it's $56,000 after like this one bonus thing that I get. My fiance is a chemical analyst. She makes about $60,000 a year. And that is what I wanted to talk about. How did we make saving for this work? If somehow everything always has to go back to the e-bike, we don't have a car. Neither of us have a car. Neither of us have paid gas or car insurance or car maintenance for 3 years now. Do you know how much money that is? It's a stupid amount of money, and guess what? We just funneled it all straight into this truck. But we did some other things to make that happen, and the reason that we saved it so aggressively and so desperately is because summer is summer, and that's when I can work, because I'm in between school years. And secondly, our lease was going to expire in July, the end of July, and it made it seem like we didn't have time. So we saved really aggressively, which
we extended our lease, and now we don't need to leave as early, which is a good outcome, but we planned for the worst, and we're reaping the benefits now. But the question is, how do we save like $4,000 a month for 4 months straight? I don't want to sell this idea of meritocracy. I want you to see the dystopian nature of what I'm about to say. Here's how we save that money. Neither of us own a car, which means we take bikes everywhere. I mean, to the grocery store. I have a giant trailer that I use. I got incredibly handy at maintaining those bikes. I got incredibly good at making it cheap. So that saved us a bunch of money. We don't have cars, which means through the winter in Denver, Colorado, we just dealt with it. We layered up. We also did a few other things that are just sad and dystopian. For the past 4 months, I have not paid for most of my medications. I just went without them and tried to not die. And die I sure did. And I'm still skipping out, and I will probably skip out for another year or something on my asthma medication called Symbicort, which is a corticosteroid which helps people with asthma as progressed as mine not die all the time. Symbicort makes it so my lungs are less pissy. Every asthma attack I have is going to be adding to the scar tissue that's already in my lungs, which is probably shortening my lifespan, and I've been told that, and my doctors have always hated that I keep taking myself off of Symbicort, but it's because the inhaler is $200 a month no matter how good your insurance is. I'm sure there are people who have exceptions, but of all the insurance options that my school, and I'm a teacher, so we have good insurance, right? No, it's still a $200 a month inhaler, okay? Which is, I decided that I would just not breathe for a little while, and I am permanently kind of winded, so I'm just killing myself for this, which is, my dad was a steel worker, and his dad was a steel worker, and I remember my dad told me growing up, he wanted me to go to college. He didn't push it. He was just like, you got 3 options, military, job, or a college. You choose one, right? But he told me, he's like, I don't want you to have to sell your body to survive. That's what he told me. He's like, I did, my dad did, his dad did, and for generations we have been selling our physical well-being to make money by doing these incredibly hard jobs that expose you to incredibly unhealthy things. And it is sad, and I feel bad that throughout my life, due to the nature of maybe our economy, maybe I'd say the nature of government itself, maybe of the state, I've had to do similar things. Maybe just not for my formal job, but for a lot of the things surrounding it, I too have had to trade my physiological well-being for economic opportunity, which is not how it should be. So that's how we saved $18,000 in 4 months. We don't have cars. I stopped buying medication. I stopped eating at work. I'm pretty sure we did a bunch of other stuff too. Oh yeah, I totally forgot. We've been selling everything. Everything. If it's not needed, we've been selling it. So extra furniture, we had an extra electric scooter, we sold that. I had extra cameras for this YouTube thing, I sold those. I have been getting rid of all the technology I don't need. We sold both of our gaming computers. Now we have bought a replacement to put into the box truck, but we have been just selling as many personal belongings as we possibly can. I don't want to focus on the idea of like financial savviness. Like, yes, I'm financially savvy. I figured out a lot of the cheat codes and the stupid things and the horrible dystopian trade-offs that you have to make to figure out how to make money work in life. But it's not a good thing, and I don't want you to idolize that. It'd be a lot better if you put your time into learning how to tear down the entire system of government in which we are placed under. It's a lot more valuable if you like research anarchy or something than if you figured out how to deal with money the way that I did. Take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You cannot win a war if you are already dead.
Speaking of dead, I will actually die if you do not like and subscribe. My next video is going to be about the electrical system and the HVAC system that we're putting in. At the end of this entire project, I will actually upload an instructional video, an hour-long instructional video talking about the techniques and practices I use to build this tiny home. But I'm going to be spending just as much time researching the underlying issues and trying to inform people about what's actually going on here. Instead of romanticizing this process. So yeah, please be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you. Goodbye.